Good afternoon, class. So the next lecture that we will be discussing is going to deal with tissues in the integumentary system. Okay, so we will be covering chapter 4 and chapter 5. All right, so as we mentioned previously, that cells are the functional units of life, okay? And what happens is cells group together to form tissues, okay? And then tissues group together to form organs. Organs work together to form organ systems, and organ systems all working together forms an organism, okay? So individual body cells are specialized to perform different types of functions to maintain homeostasis. Okay, so essentially a tissue is just going to be a group of similar cells, okay, that all perform a common or related function. Okay, for instance, your kidney is going to have tissues that's different than your heart. Okay. And so on and so on. So tissues are going to just be groups of cells that perform a similar function. All right. And histology is the study of tissues. Okay. So histology is the study of tissues, and there are 4 basic types of tissue: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. All right. So this is just a diagram showing you the 4 different types of tissues and giving you some examples. Okay, so again, nervous tissue, the nervous system is important for internal communication. Okay, so your brain, spinal cord, and you have your nerves. Your muscle tissues, again, going to be important for movement. All right, epithelial tissue is going to form boundaries between different environments. So it's going to line external surfaces, and is also going to line internal surfaces, and it also forms glands, which we'll talk about when we're talking about epithelial tissue. And then connective tissue, okay, supports, protects, binds other tissues together. Examples they have up here are bones, tendons, fat. All right, blood is also a connective tissue. Okay, so again, epithelial tissue, all right, it's going to be a sheet of cells, all right, that's going to cover either the external body surfaces or internal cavities, okay? So 2 main forms: the covering of an external surface, example will be your skin, and then internal surfaces, lining, and then also you have glands. So epithelium makes up glands, and glands are going to secrete chemicals. They can either secrete them in the body, or they can secrete them outside of the body. So again, they can secrete chemicals, waste. It could be hormones. Okay, different types of glands. Okay, you have different types of glands. So just be aware of that. And the main functions of epithelial tissue is protection, absorption, filtration, excretion, secretion, and sensory reception. So the epithelial tissue has 5 characteristics. All right, it has polarity. Polarity just means you have a top and a bottom. Okay, you have a specific top and bottom. Okay, it has polarity. On top and the bottom, specialized contacts, supported by connective tissues, avascular. Avascular means no blood supply, but innervated. Innervated means that the nerves, it does have a nerve supply, okay? And regeneration, okay? So let's talk more in detail about the characteristics. So polarity, again, cells have a top and a bottom, okay? They have a apical surface, which is the top, the upper free side, and it's going to be exposed to either the surface if it's on the external surface, or if it's internal, it's going to be exposed to the cavity. Okay. And then you have a basal surface. Basal surface is going to be the bottom. Okay. The lower attached side faces inwards towards the body. Okay. And it's going to attach to the basal lamina. And the basal lamina is an adhesive sheet that holds the basal surface of epithelial cells to underlying cells. Alright, so both surfaces differ in structure and function. So the apical surface, the top, is different from the basal surface, the bottom. Okay, they differ in structure and function. All epithelial sheets rest upon and are supported by connective tissue. Okay, but in between the epithelial and the connective tissue, okay, so in between the epithelial and the connective tissue is a basement membrane. And the basement membrane is made up of the basal lamina and the reticular lamina. So the first layer of the basement membrane, again, basement membrane has two layers, the basal lamina and the reticular lamina. So the first layer is the basal lamina. All right, and the basal lamina is going to be adjacent to the basal surface of an epithelium, and it is a very thin supporting sheet, okay, that is non-cellular. All right, it consists mainly of glycoproteins, and it's going to act as a selective filter that determines which molecules diffusing from the underlying connective tissue are allowed to enter the epithelium. All right, the basal lamina also acts as a scaffolding along which epithelial cells can migrate to repair a wound. All right, so again, that's the basal lamina. That's going to be the a very thin supportive sheet, okay, that is non-cellular and consists largely of glycoproteins, okay, and it's going to act mainly as a selective filter, okay, that's going to determine which molecules diffusing from the underlying connective tissue are allowed to enter the epithelium. All right, so deep to the basal lamina, all right, you're going to have the reticular lamina. The reticular lamina consists of a layer of extracellular material containing a fine network of collagen protein fibers that belongs to the underlying connective tissue. Another characteristic of epithelial tissue is that it is avascular. So again, avascular means no blood vessels. All right. So the epithelial tissue has to be nourished by diffusion from the underlying connective tissue. All right. But the epithelial tissue does have a nerve supply. So it is supplied by nerve fibers. So it is innervated. Innervated just means it has a nerve supply. Another characteristic of epithelial tissue is regeneration. Okay, so they have to be able to regenerate themselves, replace themselves essentially. Okay, so it's going to be stimulated, regeneration is going to be stimulated by a loss of the polarity, of the apical basal polarity, okay, and broken lateral contacts. All right, so any loss of the apical basal polarity, top and bottom polarity, or any side broken lateral contacts is going to stimulate regeneration. And again, remember with your epithelium, is either going to be covering external surfaces or internal cavities. So they're going to be exposed to a lot of friction, some hostile chemicals, okay? So it's going to result in damage and they're going to have to be replaced, okay? and that's going to require adequate nutrients and cell division. All right, so when naming epithelium, okay, you got to focus on two names essentially, okay? You have the first name, which is going to indicate the number of cells layers, okay? If it's a single layer, you're going to call it simple, okay? If it's two or more layers, it's going to be called stratified, okay? So simple, single layer, stratified, two or more layers, okay? And then the second name is going to indicate the shape of the cells, okay? Squamous is flattened. Cuboidal is going to be boxed like a cube. And then you have columnar, which is going to be column-like, okay? So, also of note, all right, with stratified epithelium, okay, remember stratified is going to be two or more layers, okay? The shape can vary in each layer, so cell name is according to the shape in the apical, the top layer. So with your stratified epithelium, the the cell name is according to the shape in the top layer. Okay, the top layer, not the middle layer or the bottom layer, because the shape can vary in each layer. So the top layer is where you name the shape. And just be aware, and this is intuitive, okay? Your simple epithelium, a single layer, okay, that's going to be good for things that need to diffuse, okay? So things that need to diffuse is going to be a simple layer. Stratified layer, two or more layers, again, that's going to be good for things that you need a protection. You're going to want stratified layers when you want, to protect something, okay? Okay, so we have two figures here. One shows you a simple epithelium, one shows you stratified. But also you have your apical surface, which is the top layer, and your basal surface, which is the bottom layer. All right, so remember, with adjacent to that basal surface, you're gonna have your basement membrane, which consists of two layers. Remember, the basal lamina, which is going to be right here, and then deep to the basal lamina, you have the reticular lamina, okay? And that's your basement membrane. Consists of those two layers. All right, so this is just showing you classification based on cell shape. Squamous, squished, okay? Cuboidal, cube-like. Columnar, column-like and tall, okay? And just remember that the shape is going to be based on, when you have a stratified epithelium, which you have multiple layers, the shape is going to be based on the top layer, the apical layer, okay? Just remember, the shape is going to be determined by the apical layer, the top layer. All right, so again, talk a little bit more about simple versus the simple epithelium. So again, when you're dealing with a single layer of cells, okay, all right, simple epithelium is going to be involved with things like absorption, secretion, or filtration. All right, processes where you want diffusion to take place easily, okay? All right, one layer of cells can allow diffusion to take place easily, all right, for things like absorption, secretion, or filtration. All right, simple squamous are going to be cells that are flattened, okay, and the cytoplasm is sparse. All right, so the function is going to be where rapid diffusion is priority. Example, the kidneys and the lungs, okay? So we have some nomenclature. So when you have, again, specialized to specialized simple squamous epithelium based on location. So again, endothelium and mesothelium are still both simple squamous epithelium, but we call them endothelium, okay, because the location, they are found in the lining of lymphatic vessels, blood vessels, in the heart. So again, endothelium is just the lining of the lymphatic vessels, the blood vessels, in the heart, and the endothelium is just simple squamous epithelium. We just call it endothelium because of where it's located. All right. Again, lining of lymphatic vessels, blood vessels in the heart, and then the mesothelium. All right, it's going to be the serous membranes. Okay, and those serous membranes they're going to line the ventral body cavities. Okay, all right, serous membranes that line the ventral body cavities. This slide has a diagram with the description, function, and location, along with a photograph, okay, of a simple squamous epithelium. Okay, so these types of slides are very good slides to study because it tells you the description, the function, the location, and then you can actually see an actual picture of what a slide will look like, in anatomy lab. If you went to the lab, you would see what the slide would look like. So these are very good slides to study right here. All right, so description again, single layer of flattened cells, squamous, simple squamous means single, simple means single layer, squamous, flattened shape. All right, cells with a disc-shaped central nuclei and sparse cytoplasm. All right, it is the simplest of the epithelia. Function is going to allow materials to diffuse and filtrate. All right, in sites where protection is not important. All right, location, find them in the kidney glomeruli, air sacs of the lungs, lining of the heart, blood vessels and lymphatic vessels, lining of the ventral body cavities, the serosals. So again, here is a photograph of air sacs of the lung. Well, I'm sorry, of the simple squamous epithelium forming part of the alveoli. Okay, again, your alveoli are pretty much the air sacs of the lungs. Okay, so you see the air sacs, and then you see the simple epithelium, simple squamous epithelium, single layer, flattened. All right, and then you can see the nuclei of the squamous epithelium right there. Okay. All right, so simple cuboidal epithelium, single layer of cells, but these are going to be cube shaped. All right, so your cube shaped, cuboidal shaped cells are going to be involved in either secreting something or absorbing something. Okay, so these are going to be what you find in your glands. Okay, and in many kidney tubules. Okay. So these are going to form the walls of your smallest ducts of your glands, okay, and the kidney tubules, okay. So again, glands, what do glands do? They secrete things, okay. And then your kidney tubules, they are involved in secreting and absorbing things, okay. All right, so again, when I think of simple cuboidal epithelium, I always think of glands, okay? Glands or kidney tubules, okay? That's what I think of automatically. When I think of simple cuboidal, my mind automatically goes to glands or kidney tubules, all right? So description is a single layer of cube-like cells with large spherical central nuclei. Again, function and secretion and absorption. Location, kidney tubules, ducts, and secretory portions of small glands. All right, ovary surface. All right, so here is a graph of the simple cuboidal epithelium and kidney tubules. Okay, so you can see the simple cuboidal epithelial cells. Okay, all right, and so a lot of times you see that, and then you can see the connective tissue. Okay, all right, so then a lot of students, well, then what's that opening in the middle of the simple cuboidal epithelial cell? So remember, these cells take part in secretion and absorption. So that's where the cell's going to secrete or absorption is going to take place. All right, in that empty opening. Okay, a lot of times it may connect to a duct. If it's a gland with a duct, sometimes it has no ducts. So it's just an opening that can connect to the outside of the cell. But again, that opening is going to be where the secretion and absorption is going to take place. Okay, things that get secreted are going to go through there. All right, and then you see right here, all right, is the basement membrane. So again, when you have photographs like this, it gets hard to distinguish the basement membrane from the connective tissue. But remember, always remember, the basement membrane is going to be right closest to the cell. So closest to the basal surface of the cell. Okay, so as soon as you can locate the basal surface of the cell, all right, then that's going to be where the basement membrane is. And then below the basement membrane, okay, always below the basement membrane, you're going to have the connective tissue. Okay, the simple columnar epithelium, again, simple means it's going to be a single layer. All right, then columnar tells you the shape of the cell. It's going to be tall, closely packed cells. All right, many of them have, some cells have microvilli, all right, and some have cilia. Okay, microvilli are going to be found more in cells that need larger surface area for absorption. All right, and then the cilia we found in like your respiratory cells. All right, that want to be in be in movement and move the mucus. Okay, some layers contain mucus secreting goblet cells. Okay, the simple columnar epithelium is going to be involved in absorption and secretion of mucus, enzymes, and other substances. Okay, and the ciliated cells are going to be what moves the mucus. Okay, again, ciliated cells move the mucus. The cells that have microvilli, again, are going to be found in places where absorption, where having a larger surface area is important. For instance, in your digestive, small intestine, large intestine cells, where they need to, where they involve in absorption. Okay, so a larger surface area is important. All right, and microvilli allows that. So they're found in digestive tract, gallbladder, ducts of some glands, bronchi, and uterine tubes. So here is a slide of simple columnar epithelium. So again, simple means it's going to be a single layer. All right, columnar tells you the shape, tall cells with round to oval nuclei. All right, many cells bear microvilli. All right, so again, microvilli is going to be on the apical, the top layer, the top part of the cell. Okay, so you see how this microvilli is exposed. This opening is going to be where it can be exposed to, nutrients. All right, and the microvilli is going to function to absorb these nutrients that the cells are exposed to. All right, and you can have some cells, okay, that bear cilia, okay, and then you can have also a mucus secreting layer of goblet cells. Okay, so these are right here are your mucus of goblet cells. All right. So you may wonder, ask yourself, well, could this image here is of simple columnar epithelium of the small intestines. Okay, so you may wonder why would you want mucus. Okay, mucus layers can help protect the digestive cells from harsh chemicals, acids, bases, and so forth. All right, so the function of this simple columnar epithelium: absorption, secretion of mucus, enzymes, and other substances, and they can be ciliated to propel the mucus by ciliary action. The non-ciliated types line most of the digestive tract, which would be, the stomach to rectum, gallbladder, and excretory ducts of some glands. The ciliated variety, you're gonna find it in the small lines, the small bronchi. Again, that deals with your respiratory tract, uterine tubes, and some regions of the uterus. Okay. And you also see the round to oval shaped nuclei. Okay. So now let's talk about the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. The pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium can always be tricky to identify because of the name. So pseudo, all right, pseudo, something that's pseudo, that's something that's not real. Okay, pseudo means not real. So pseudo-stratified means it's not really stratified. So it looks like it's stratified, looks like it's multi-layered, but it's actually a single layer simple epithelium. So again, pseudo means it's not real, and then stratified. So it's not really stratified, but it looks like it has multi-layers. It looks stratified, so it's actually a single layer. Okay, so pseudo means false. All right, so many cells are ciliated. All right, they have cilia involved in secretion, particularly of mucus, and also in movements of the mucus via the ciliary sweep action. You're gonna find it mostly in the upper respiratory tract, ducts of large glands, and tubules, and in the testes. All right, so again, pseudo-stratified. Pseudo means false, not real. So it's not really stratified. It looks like it's multi-layers. If you look at this picture, it looks like it's multi-layers, okay? But this is, in fact, this one layer. So again, pseudo-stratified is always tricky to identify because it looks like it's multi-layer. So there's single layer of cells differing in height. So that they differ in height, that's what makes them look like it's more than one layer, okay? Some not reaching the free surface. All right, the nuclei seen at different levels. Also, normally, if it's a single layer, the nuclei will be at one level, but these nuclei are at varying levels, okay? And may contain the mucus secreting cells, and they bear cilia. All right, so you see the cilia. You see cilia, you know you're dealing with the top, the apical surface. All right, then the goblet cells are easy to identify. All right, and then so their function is going to be to secrete substances, particularly mucus. Okay, and then the cilia is going to be what moves the mucus. So the location, so the non-ciliated type, and you can find them in male sperm carrying ducts and ducts of large glands. The ciliated variety you can find lining the trachea and most of the upper respiratory tract. Okay. So if you look at the photograph again, So you see the cilia, see the goblet cells, and then when you try to, you start looking at the nuclei, okay, you see how they vary in height, and then you see the basement membrane, okay, that's the basal surface, the basement membrane. All right, so again, the pseudostratified is a tough one to identify, but whenever you hear about anything dealing with the trachea or lining the upper respiratory tract, okay, think pseudostratified columnar epithelium, okay. But again, pseudostratified is tricky to identify because it looks like it's more than one layer, okay. But you just have to try to identify the nucleus, okay, and then see how each cell, you see how this one doesn't totally reach the top, the apical top, and then just try to look follow the nucleus up and down, and see whether it's you're dealing with one cell or not. All right. But again, when you hear things like the trachea and the upper respiratory system, you should automatically think pseudostratified columnar epithelium, okay? Because again, this cilia is going to propel the mucus, okay? And again, I talked about how, remember, smokers who smoke, they can damage the cilia so that it doesn't function properly, and therefore it can't propel the mucus, and then people have buildup of mucus in their lungs and they have trouble breathing, all right, because of that. And again, that happens from long-term smoking. All right, so then you have your stratified epithelial tissue. All right, so again, stratified, you mean you have more than two layers, okay? Two or more layers of cells. So new cells regenerate from below. The basal cells divide and they're gonna migrate toward the surface, okay? So again, the basal cells divide and migrate toward the surface. They're more durable than simple epithelium because protection is a major role. All right, so you have stratified squamous. Again, so these are going to be multiple layers but flat cells. So these are the most widespread of the stratified epithelium. The free surface is squamous. So again, when you talk about the shape, whether it's going to be squamous, columnar, whatever the shape's going to be, you have to look at the free surface, the apical, the top. And if the top is squished, then it's going to be, if the top is flat, then it's squamous. Even if the deeper is cuboidal, even though underneath that it might be cube shape or column shape, okay, it's a top surface that determines the shape. If the free is flat, then it's squamous, okay? Located in areas of high wear and tear, example, the skin, keratinized cells found in skin, and then you have non-keratinized cells are found in moist linings. So this slide, again, it has the stratified squamous epithelium. So again, if you notice, if you look at the apical, the top surface, you can clearly see that they're flattened. You can see the nuclei, okay? And then you see the basement membrane right here, and then you see the connective tissue. All right, so for stratified squamous epithelium, thick membrane composed of several cell layers. Basal cells are cuboidal or columnar. So you see how these basal cells down here are cuboidal or columnar, and then but it's the apical, the top layer that determines the shape. Okay, so you see the top layer is flat, so that's why it's squamous. All right. But the basal cells are metabolically active. Okay. Surface cells are flattened and they keratinized type. The cell surface are full of keratin and dead. So with the skin that's keratinized, the top surface is going to be full of keratin and they're going to be dead. For instance, basal cells are going to be the ones that are active in mitosis. All right, so the basal cells are active in mitosis and produce cells of the more superficial layer. So the basal cells are going to produce the cells are going to migrate up toward the surface. Okay, so they're going to produce the cells of the more superficial layer. They're going to migrate to the surface. The function is protects underlying tissues in areas subject to abrasions. Non-keratinized type forms the most moist linings of the esophagus, mouth, and vagina. Keratinized variety forms the epidermis of the skin, a dry membrane. So stratified epithelium continue. So the stratified cuboidal epithelium is actually quite rare. Found in some sweat and mammary glands, typically only 2 cell layers thick. Stratified columnar epithelium, also very limited, distributed in the body. Small amount found in the pharynx, in the male urethra, and lining some gland ducts. Usually occurs at transition areas between 2 other types of epithelia. One, only apical layer is columnar. So again, these 2 types, stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar, are rare. Okay. Transitional epithelium forms lining of hollow urinary organs found in bladder, ureters, and urethra. Basal layer cells are cuboidal or columnar. Ability for the cells to change shape when stretched allows for increased flow of urine in the case of the bladder, more storage space. Okay, so your transitional epithelium, pretty much think of the bladder. Okay. So here's the description and image of transitional epithelium. So it resembles both stratified squamous and stratified cuboidal. Okay, so when you see what kind of, you can't really kind of make out whether it's stratified squamous or cuboidal, but also a lot of these more rare type of epithelium, if you can remember the location, a lot of times it helps you just as much. So if you remember bladder, transitional, if you put those two together, it helps you out a lot too. The basal cells are cuboidal or columnar. Surface cells, dome-shaped or squamous-like, depending on the degree of organ stretch. So the function stretches readily, permits storage of urine to distend urinary organ, location lines the ureters, bladder, and parts of the urethra. So here you see the transitional epithelium, the basement membrane, and then the connective tissue underneath that. All right, so remember glands, it's going to be one or more cells that makes and secretes an aqueous fluid, called a secretion. They're classified by how they are released. Okay. So the site of product release. So endocrine, think of endocrine, internally secreting. Example are hormones. Think of, when you think of exocrine, think of exit, X. Externally secreted. Example, sweat. So the number of cells forming a gland could be one cell, example, a goblet cell, or it could be multicellular. All right. Also be aware that exocrine glands have ducts, whereas endocrine do not. Okay. All right, so endocrine glands are ductless again. So secretions are not released into a duct. They're going to be released into the surrounding interstitial fluid, all right, which is picked up by the circulatory system. A lot of the endocrine glands secrete hormones, okay, which are chemical messengers that travel through the lymph or blood to their specific target organs, and then the target organs are going to respond in some characteristic way. All right. So a lot of the endocrine glands, what they secrete are hormones. A lot of them. Okay. Okay. So exocrine glands, they use ducts. So they secrete products into ducts. So the secretions are going to be released onto body surfaces, all right, such as the skin, or into body cavities. They're more numerous than endocrine glands. Examples include mucus, sweat, oil, and salivary glands, and they can be unicellular or multicellular. So we're going to stop here for the first online lecture for chapter for the tissue and integumentary system. We're going to pick up on the next lecture talking about connective tissue.